NFL Cutdown was on Tuesday, and we still have several questions about multiple backfields in the NFL. Let's break it all down next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. You could also read her over at Yahoo. And it's a Wednesday show, so of course that means our good friend Matt Williamson is here. Follow him on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. Matt, I want to start with some backfields that are fascinating to me. And let's start with my Dallas Cowboys, who have Ezekiel Elliott, Rico Dowdle, Hunter Lipke, who's a fullback, Deuce Vaughn, who's 5'5", and today they signed 29-year-old washed up Dalvin Cook. What do we do with this backfield?
They're going to sign one of you guys next, by the way.
Yeah, I know. We're not that far washed.
I am. I fit perfectly. Yeah, someone else from that draft class. They should probably add Fournette next, from that draft class. There you go. So a lot of these backfields are going to be ugly. They're going to be murky. They're going to be fluid. I'm sure they'll change throughout the course of the year quite a bit. Who's the hot hand? But I think some of them you just need to look at a very week-to-week basis. And Ryan McDowell and I used to talk about running backs almost like just look at these guys through a redraft lens almost, especially these bad situations as opposed to a dynasty lens. Cook, to kind of steal something you said, Marcus, is there any chance him and Zeke can be active together on game day? Considering their age, their skill sets, their redundancy, their lack of special teams, I think it's an opportunity to jump on Rico Dowdle. To me, he's the best player of the group right now, and nobody wants to give him any credit because he's not a first-round pick or going to be on a Hall of Fame ballot someday.
Kate, what are your thoughts?
I think you have to approach this from the lens of a redraft league. I don't want anything to do with any of these guys. I don't think there's any way they can be, like you mentioned, Matt, like active together on game day. This cannot be the answer for the Dallas Cowboys in 2024. Now, Marcus, I'm most intrigued by your opinion because I'm looking at everybody on this offense and I'm saying, I'm looking at the running backs and I'm saying garbage, wasting my time. Like, it even feels like the dart throws here that, what would you guys throw for a Rico Dowdle in a dynasty league? Let's say you're a contender looking for some depth at running back. Like, I'm having trouble even evaluating what I should send because like the range of outcomes is so significant. They keep trying to add bodies to this backfield. Like, hey, that's my primary question. What should we send for Rico Dowdle if we're looking to trade for him?
Third at most.
I was going to say a fourth.
I was leaning like late third, fourth round pick. And even that feels like it could be far too much. Like, Marcus, as the resident Cowboys expert, how are you projecting this backfield?
And do you agree Dowdle looks the best?
Oh, not even question. Like, if you're stacking talent wise, he is the best running back they have. He's the most complete running back they have. He only played, I think it was like 6 snaps in the preseason, and it was in the first game, and it was all with the first team, and then we didn't see him again. So that tells me that I think the Cowboys want him to be the lead back. The problem with Rico Dowdle is he's a 26-year-old running back who really has had a hard time staying healthy. And I think that's why you're seeing the Cowboys go out and sign somebody like Dalvin Cook, where they don't need to give Dalvin Cook a lot of practice reps and to get him ready for a game. If Rico Dowdle gets hurt, you bring up Dalvin Cook from the practice squad. You can elevate him a couple times, and he's ready to go. I do think Rico is going to be the guy that when we open the season, he's going to be your week 1 starter. He's going to be the guy that I project to get the most touches. The problem is if he's not getting the touchdowns, because I do think Zeke is going to get all the goal line work, and we'll see about his role on third down. How valuable is that in the Cowboys offense? I don't know, Matt. However, I also think there's a better than 0% chance that he's just so much better than these other guys. And the Cowboys lean into making him the workhorse back. Mike McCarthy always talks about using running backs by committee. And then we get into the season and it's really just one guy, right? Like last year, it was Tony Pollard and they really didn't play anybody else. I think once he finds the guy, that guy's actually going to be pretty valuable for fantasy.
So I think it's a great point about him taking the short or losing the short goal line touchdowns. I'm sure that'll go to Zeke. And I do worry that even if Rico is the best football player and everybody can see it, Jerry might not agree, and just because of the ownership in that particular franchise. But that being said, I just moved Dowdle up a fair amount this last couple of days. And for redraft, I have him right there with Zamir White and Devin Singletary as I don't really like, but number ones. And I think there's some value to being the starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys, more so than the Raiders or Giants.
And that was going to be my next point is you look at this Cowboys offense from the last 4 years, right? Since Mike McCarthy has gotten there, whenever Dak Prescott has played, this has been the number one offense in the league in points per game. Like there's going to be plenty of opportunities. It's just how much goal line work does Ezekiel Elliott steal from Rico Dowdle? And does somebody else become a part of this backfield, whether it's Dalvin Cook, whether it's Deuce Vaughn, Hunter Lipke, maybe they go out and trade for Khalil Herbert, whoever. But as of right now, Rico is the guy that I want on my team.
Here's the thing, guys. Like, it is so valuable to be the lead running back for the Dallas Cowboys. Like, we cannot understate how much octane this group has here. So, like, let me throw a number at you. 247. That is the number of offensive plays that the Dallas Cowboys ran in the red zone last year. 247. The second most in the league was 215. That's a pretty big margin. So that's between the Dallas Cowboys and the Detroit Lions. And we're rostering everybody on the Detroit Lions. We're rostering their starting running back, their backup running back, their starting wide receiver, starting tight end. Like, we're going all in on the Lions offense. I think the same thing probably does stand for the Cowboys. It's just a question of like, you have to know that, that any sort of investment here is going to be a risk. I'm still kind of hoping that the Khalil Herbert buzz is a real thing, because I think Khalil Herbert in a Dallas Cowboys offense, we're looking at, a borderline RB1 rest of season. And, maybe he gets a 2-year contract extension, something like that. Because Herbert doesn't have a ton of touch volume here in the NFL. Wouldn't command a monster contract on the free market. Like, I think that would actually be super smart by the Dallas Cowboys to lock up a relatively cheap running back over the next couple of seasons who's been super efficient. But like, I don't know. How annoyed would you be if you sent a late 3rd round pick, or what projects to be a late 3rd round pick, for Rico Dowdle, and then tomorrow they sign or trade for Khalil Herbert?
That's kind of the risk, though, right? I mean, like when you're trading a late 3rd round pick or whatever 3rd round pick, that there's a chance that that guy's just not going to end up becoming useful for you at all. So it wouldn't bother me too much. I'm
not sure Khalil Herbert's Walter Payton either.
No, and I honestly
don't kill my dreams.
I like the guy, but
I think that's why Dallas hasn't made a move like that yet. It's because I like Khalil Herbert, and I think I might like him better than Rico Dowdle. But is it enough to give up a pick for Khalil Herbert in the last year of his rookie contract? Maybe Dallas feels like that type of trade will still be on the table 3 weeks from now. We don't need to make that move right now.
Real quick question for you about, you've seen Dowdle more than us. I have a hunch, Marcus. From 1 to 10, how would you rank him as a receiver?
Like a 4. He's a better blocker than he is a receiver, but that matters, right? Like, I think he can get on the field a lot as a blocker. The only issue is I don't know how much the Cowboys are going to have Ezekiel Elliott on the field, like on 3rd and 4, right? To help.
That was kind of my question. Yeah.
Right. So that's a little fluid, but my sense is, Matt, the Cowboys are going to be pretty cautious with Zeke. I think they want to try to keep him healthy for December and January. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see Rico and maybe Hunter Lipke, who is a 250-pound fullback / running back, handling a lot of the third down work. Wouldn't be surprised. All right, we've got some other backfields I want to talk about, including San Francisco's, because all of a sudden, that looks like a pretty bare depth chart behind Christian McCaffrey. Who is the running back to own behind CMC? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Gametime. I absolutely love Gametime. It's what I use whenever I want to buy tickets to college football games or the NFL. Gametime now has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. You can also see a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And get this, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Gametime ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go listen to the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. Get daily insights to the best fantasy draft strategies so that you can win your league this season. You can find the link to the Locked On Fantasy Show in the descriptions of this show, so you don't even need to go search for it. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Matt, I want to ask you about a couple different backfields here. Let's start with San Fran. Obviously, they have Christian McCaffrey, but he's been dealing with a calf injury over the last couple of weeks, has not practiced a ton.
Christian McCaffrey injury.
Yeah, there you go.
I've been loving that. Yeah, I do. I've got the peacock all the time.
Such a dad joke there for you. Elijah Mitchell, who had a fantastic rookie season. His year is over with an injury. He's already been placed on the injured reserve list. He will not be coming back this year. Isaac Guerrero is somebody they spent a day 3 pick on. Jordan Mason has looked good in the preseason. This is one of the most valuable backup situations in the league. Which running back do you want to have on your team outside of McCaffrey?
I'm going to run this by Peacock in an hour when we hit record, but I feel very strongly as we speak right now about Mason. And like in redraft leagues, I am grabbing him in the late rounds, 2 rounds before I should, because McCaffrey's not young. It's a premium handcuff. I have no faith in Guerrero. Mitchell's hurt as usual. And this style, Mostert has some of this, they like the fast guys that run in a straight line and run into things real hard, and beat themselves up. And I think Mason has more juice and wiggle than that.
Kate, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, much like the situation here in Dallas, like the backup running back here is going to be high value, and that is it. And I'm just going to be honest, like whether or not you like Jordan Mason, they're running out of warm bodies. And that's a frequent problem here for the San Francisco 49ers. It's got to be Mason. And I want a piece of that on my dynasty rosters. The only thing is, question mark, what do you have to trade for Jordan Mason right now, knowing that Christian McCaffrey is dealing with an injury? Nice. And the fact that, like, let's face it, Jordan Mason right now, pretty buzzy name, especially considering the injuries they have elsewhere at the position. So again, it comes like, there's no doubt to me that like, I would much rather have a Jordan Mason than a Rico Dowdle, for instance. But the question is, how much more do you have to pay for that Jordan Mason as opposed to a Rico Dowdle?
I don't think you have to pay anything for Jordan Mason. He's available in 94% of leagues right now on ESPN.
Wow.
I mean, in most of these leagues, he's available right now. Now, that number's going up because of the Elijah Mitchell injury. But I think in most of these leagues, you can get it for free. I want to mention another reason why this backfield is so interesting. If you include the postseason touches for Christian McCaffrey last year, 420 touches he had during the 2023 and 2023 postseason. I mean, we know the history of running backs that are over that 370 touch total. When you're over 400 and you were as old as Christian McCaffrey is, and you have so many lower body injuries, I would almost bet that he's going to miss at least a couple starts this year. And if it's Jordan Mason starting for this 49ers team, Matt, we're probably looking at somebody that we're ranking as a conservatively top 12 running back every single week that McCaffrey's out.
100%. And that's why I'm targeting him heavy, especially in redraft. I mean, and I'm sure he's not available in your dynasty leagues, and that's what we're talking about. And I think that was Kate's point of what do you give up for him now. But talking to Peacock every day, this is what he's been thinking is the future of the Niners offense. Is I think the plan was, and it hasn't implemented yet, is keep Ayuk. After this year, trade Debo, turn McCaffrey into Debo to extend his career, and then get it back to do the banging. And I think that makes all the sense in the world.
So, Kate, what would you be willing to give up for Jordan Mason in a dynasty league? Again, I think there are going to be dynasty leagues out there where he's just not rostered depending on the bench sizes. But assuming that he is, and you want him, and maybe you have Christian McCaffrey on your team, what would you trade to go get him?
4th? Does that seem fair? Because like
I think so.
He's an insurance policy, and like he does not have a clear pathway to like a Rico Dowdle, for instance. We said 3rd, 4th round pick. Rico Dowdle has an immediate pathway to carries, and might not be a long-term value in your dynasty leagues. But again, like in 2024, is there a reasonable pathway for him to return RB2, RB3 value? Absolutely. Jordan Mason, he's an extremely high value insurance policy, but barring injury, barring circumstances far beyond our control, he is not a guy that you can even start in the flex on any given week. So I think a 4th seems fair.
All right, man, I want to ask you about a different running back situation. I want to talk to you about the Browns because we know Nick Chubb is going to be back at some point. Now, he is on the PUP list. He's going to miss the first 4 games of the season. I think some of the beat reporters are expecting maybe like around Halloween that he'd be back. Right now, as of this recording, the Browns only have 2 running backs on the roster. I believe it's Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong. They cut Deontay Foreman. Which running back do you want from this team kind of moving forward?
Not Strong. I'm not impressed with any of them, to be honest with you, but I think Strong is a satellite back, borderline NFL player, could get cut throughout the year even type of guy. Like, I'm not even sure he's valuable enough or a great special teamer to be that 3rd back. So anyone but Strong. It's not a ringing endorsement for the other guys. I'm not a big fan of Ford as a player.
Ford is RB 44 right now in dynasty leagues. It's not appealing to you at all.
I think he's for somebody else for me.
Okay. What a ringing
Jerome for someone else.
Okay, what do you think? Look at
that
with all these puns.
Like, I think there's a realistic chance that like Ford is one of these guys that I can probably just slot into my flex. Mm-hmm. I don't think about it. I don't touch it. I don't play the matchups. Like, probably just going to give you a safe floor of like 10 points every week. Maybe he'll have a couple of 15 pointers, 17 pointers, maybe a 20 pointer in there. But I do think he's probably just kind of a set it and forget it, because I do think there's a tier break. Like, regardless of what other backup we're talking about here for the Cleveland Browns, I still think there's a tier break after Jerome Ford. And I think Ford is probably a little bit more valuable. Again, Matt, we say look at these running backs as though you're in a redraft situation.
Start them week 1 and see what happens. Like, you'd rather have him or Chuba.
I mean, we already got a good sample size of him last year, and he was serviceable for fantasy. He was an RB2.
Mm-hmm.
No, I mean, that's upside there, but
instead of even looking at it year to year, maybe even look at it week to week and just start him in week 1. Kind of like Chuba. I mean, I think they're similar until the good guy shows up or somebody better replaces them. But I would also hope in a redraft league that I've drafted somebody better than Chuba or Ford, that I wouldn't have to start them in week 1. Or my dynasty, like, if I'm not starting them, they don't have any value to me.
Okay, really quickly, just for the 2024 season, Matt, would you rather have Rico Dowdle or would you rather have Jerome Ford?
I think Rico.
Kate? Oh, I saw
Jerome
that scrunched
Ford.
up
I know what
nose.
I'm getting.
Yeah.
All right. I probably would rather have Jerome Ford. I just think he's more likely to get some goal line work. Don't feel great about either, but if they're your fourth running back on your team, you could do worse. Let's talk about yet another backfield that is really interesting. It's Josh Jacobs, and then who else in Green Bay? We will discuss that next. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. Everydayers on Thursday and Friday show. Kate and I are going to look at some of the biggest ADP risers and fallers in the month of August. So make sure you tune in for that. But let's finish up here with the Packers. We saw on Tuesday A.J. Dillon go to the season-ending injured reserve list, so he's out for the year. Marshawn Lloyd, their third-round pick from USC, is dealing with a hamstring injury. He's likely to miss multiple regular season games. There was even a report a couple of days ago that he was going to go on the injured reserve list, but because of A.J. Dillon's injury, they decided to keep him on the active roster. Matt, is there anybody in this backfield that you want outside of Josh Jacobs? And if the answer is no, are you just buying even more Josh Jacobs than normal?
That's what happened to me. Not that this was an unforeseen turn of events. I wasn't worried about A.J. Dillon to begin with, but the way things went down made me bump Jacobs up a couple spots. I think he's going to get the ball a ton. LaFleur's always kind of dealt with the committee, Aaron Jones not being a true bell cow. I think they're going to have a true bell cow out there almost every snap. And Lloyd just screams, there's always those rookie talented running backs that don't get on the field. And it's always because of ball security or pass protection. And he just screams one of those guys that could check both boxes.
Kate, what do you think?
In a bad way.
I mean, I still want, am I the only one still chasing Marshawn Lloyd here? Because again, we're a dynasty show. If you're in a win now situation, yes, Josh Jacobs probably going to get all the work he can handle to start the year, but maybe he wears down a bit to start the year after all that work. I mean, the only other depth they really have on this roster is Emmanuel Wilson. He's a 25-year-old undrafted free agent from last year's class. He had 18 touches last year. Yeah, they are going to need to lean on Marshawn Lloyd. And right now, if he can get healthy, I totally think that Josh Jacobs could be washed. And yeah, Marshawn Lloyd, if I can kind of capitalize on these injury concerns right now, Marshawn Lloyd could be the league winner in this offense.
I just don't feel great about any of these names outside of Josh Jacobs. And I'm the same way with you, Matt. I just keep bringing him up my rankings. I'm looking at some of the running backs that are being drafted ahead of him right now. Let me just read them to you. Josh Jacobs or Rachaad White, who's currently RB13.
I don't think White's going to be a thing next year. So I'm really low on White.
Okay. Would you rather have Josh Jacobs or Kenneth Walker just this year?
This year, Jacobs, Dynasty Walker.
Okay, Kate, what about you?
Real quick on Jacobs. There's a couple of these backs, Kamara, Mixon, Jacobs, and I know he's a little younger than them, but I thought they noticeably took a step backwards on film as ball carriers last year.
Yeah, I would agree. I want to ask you, Matt, really quickly about one other backfield. I know we've got so many of these that are fascinating. Sean McVay revealed on Tuesday that Kyren Williams is going to be their primary punt returner, which I can't tell you the last time a starting running back has also been the starting punt returner. Are you nervous at all about Kyren Williams? Is this something where maybe Blake Corum has been so good in training camp that they feel like they got to find ways to get both of these guys touches? What's your read on this situation?
I just dislike it because you're really putting them in harm's way. Not to mention, if you just returned a punt, are they going to be excited about handing you the football on 1st and 10 too? You're a little bit gassed. You just took a big hit. But that part doesn't worry me as much as just you're looking up in the sky and people are going to drill you, and I don't think he has a lot of experience doing it. He's super reliable. He was a team captain at Notre Dame, all that good stuff. And the Rams have very outside the box thinking. But if we had a redraft, if I owned him already, I'd be like, that's not the news I wanted to hear.
That's how the way I thought. It's I don't want my star running back getting nailed on punts 2 or 3 times a game. And I know he can protect himself because of, the fair catch stuff, but He's a running back. He's going to think that he can make a couple guys miss and take it to the house every time he touches the ball. It just feels like for a running back that has already had some major injuries, that is dealing with an injury or was dealing with an injury earlier in camp, why put him out there for any additional hits that he really doesn't need?
I don't get it.
I don't get it.
I don't get it. It's not even like they're trying to get creative with like kickoff returns here. And they're like, oh, we just want the ball in his hands.
See, that would be different. Like if they
That
said he
would
was
be
going to be a kickoff returner, I think that would have been totally different. I think that would have been easy to get behind. But as a
That's
punt
what running backs
returner,
do. Yeah, right.
As a punt
It's weird.
returner, but like, I mean, like Deebo Samuel, there's a realistic chance like Deebo Samuel could be the primary kick returner because again, with the new kickoff rules, they just want to get the ball in their best player's hands. And punt returns though, like again, so much injury risk for a guy who's already been injured. And that was, I think, a big part of why they drafted Blake Corum in the first place is to try to, limit some of that unnecessary exposure to potential injury. I'm going to be honest, for a very smart head coach, this is a very puzzling idea for me. I don't know.
I agree.
There's a lot of examples of them in history, but the one I remember most, of course, is Steelers. Like they would put Antonio Brown back in a punt return when they needed one bad or a playoff game. Yeah. That's different than if you're winning by 20 in Arizona and Kyren Williams is catching punts.
Yeah. Now, as a Cowboy fan, I remember when they used to do this with Dion or even Dez early in his career, right? But doing it with your starting running back all season long does not seem very wise. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen today. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast. Get daily insights to the best fantasy draft strategies so that you can win your league this season. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Go check out our podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. Go check us out on YouTube as well. Go follow Matt on Twitter at Williamson NFL. Check out his YouTube channel as well. You can follow Kate on Twitter at Kate Majuk. Read her at yahoo.com. And I'm at Marcus _Mosier, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.